My name is Blake Petty with Bromic Heating. I've been with Bromic for about 5 years. I'm a sales manager, specifically with specification sales. Commercial mostly, a little bit of residential. I think the biggest change came with COVID. So with COVID, restaurants had to shut down, and then the only way they were able to stay in business was to be able to have outdoor dining. Now with outdoor dining, unconditioned space, you no longer have your temperature controlled HVAC system. So people were forced to get creative with how they were going to keep their guests comfortable. With that, it was just an explosion of outdoor dining, because even post COVID, people enjoyed eating outside. And then from a restaurant standpoint, it's much cheaper to build an outdoor patio than it is a full-on enclosed space with HVAC systems and doors and windows. So not only were guests wanting to eat outside, but it was a more affordable way to build a restaurant. And then so with that came wanting to keep that design, the inside to outside flow of the design. And so there's where the opportunity really came with how we could get creative with heaters, how they could be integrated in so you can feel them, you don't see them. And then just became a much more focal point, and it wasn't a nice to have anymore. It was, we needed to have heat because we need to keep this patio open to keep our business going. So on the residential side, it's almost the same idea. Wanting to spend time outdoors, wanting to host family, friends in your outside areas, and having heat or adding heat extends that moment. So no longer as the sun goes down, we have to move everything inside. We can stay outside. Or maybe in those shoulder seasons where it's going to get a little bit colder. So it almost gives you an ROI on your investment in the outdoor space, because you and your family can use it longer into the season, longer into the evening, and you really be able to enjoy those spaces and enjoy that time together comfortably. There's definitely an awareness gap, but I think people are starting to see it more, especially when they're going out to eat. They're eating on these patios and they see that heat on the restaurant and they're like, oh, what would it take to be able to have this back in my own house? Also, a lot of architects or even construction builders have more experience with them. And so it's being brought up more, being suggested more of, hey, we can also add some heat to really be able to extend those times together and the usability of these patios. So the biggest difference between a Bromic infrared heater and a mushroom or a flame tower is the design of the heater. So all of those outdoor heaters are using what we call infrared, which is electromagnetic waves, similar to light waves, but they're longer wavelengths, so they are not visible to the naked eye. And so that infrared wave travels through space and it's absorbed by the body. And that absorption of energy speeds up your molecules, vibrates more, and that creates that feeling of warmth. So infrared isn't heat yet, it's energy, it's traveling, and then that energy is then transferred to your body, and that energy then translates into that feeling of heat. So there's three different wavelengths. There's short or near, medium, and then long or far infrared. With Bromic, we find that the medium wavelength is the most efficient in the best way. So your short wavelength infrared is going to be extremely hot, but because it's so hot, it's closer to the visible light spectrum, so you can see those lights. So it comes across this really harsh red-orange glow. On the opposite side, with long wave or far infrared, it's farthest away from the visible light spectrum. It's lower in temperature. So these are going to be more of your gas tube or big industrial boxy type heaters, really useful in like large commercial warehouse space. So in an outdoor unconditioned space, they're just not hot enough to really be able to make you feel it. So that's where Bromic finds the medium wave to be that perfect balance where it doesn't cast the light, but the heat and the energy is strong enough that you actually can feel it and provide you that comfort. So now when you compare Bromic to some of the other mushroom or flame tower, now it's not only is the wavelength we're using, but it's the design. So what we use is a directional infrared. So if you think about a mushroom heater, you're heating up 360 degrees. But as you step away from it, you don't feel it as much. So it's a really inefficient design. So Bromic has designed a directional infrared where you can focus that energy on the area that you want to heat. So it just makes it a much more efficient way. So therefore you use less heaters and less fuel costs. So it's cheaper to run because of that efficiency. So the terms infrared and radiant people use interchangeably, and they're in essence describing the same thing, but they're just slightly different. So how I like to think of it is infrared is the electromagnetic waves, the energy that's being transferred. And then as that energy is absorbed by your body, that translates into a radiant heat feeling. Infrared is sort of the how it is created, and the radiant heat is what you feel. Radiant heat is the aftermath of infrared. It's the feeling, it's the result of. As you're sitting in front of a campfire and you're feeling that campfire, that feeling is the radiant heat, but you weren't touching the fire, right? So that heat transfer, that energy transfers through infrared. There's three different ways that you can heat something or feel heat. So you have conduction, which is heat energy transfer through touch. And then you have your traditional HVAC system, which is convection heating. So that's where you heat up the air. And then you have your infrared, your radiant heat, which is heat transfer, energy transfer through those electromagnetic waves. And in an outdoor space, a traditional HVAC system would be extremely inefficient because you would just be blowing hot air into the outside and then it just dissipates. It would just be completely inefficient energy waste. So that's where infrared is the most efficient way to heat an outdoor space because it does not need to be mixed with the air. So a flame tower is very much more for aesthetic purposes. They're great to be at the front of your restaurant entrance, kind of drawing people in. But when you talk about efficiency of heat, it's a really inefficient design because the actual flame through that gas tube is not going to be producing that much electromagnetic radiation energy to really transfer heat. So you really would have to get very close to that heater to feel much of anything. So more for aesthetics, ambiance, but not for an efficient way to heat an outdoor space. Outdoor fireplaces are great, but it's a really inefficient way to heat an outdoor space. We've all experienced being at a fire pit. You have to get really close. So usually when I'm working with clients, I want them to have that fireplace. It's a focal point of your backyard, but then you also need to add Bromic infrared heaters to keep everyone comfortable around the space. It's not an either or. I want to use them both and build them together. Have that fireplace be your focal point of your design, and then have the Bromic heaters be supporting and being able to keep that comfortable without necessarily you even seeing them. When we're talking about heat rise, we're talking about convection heat. So that's the hot air rising because hot air is lighter than colder air. When we're talking about infrared heat, there's no heat loss or rise because it's electromagnetic waves. The one thing we do want to consider, though, is energy loss as it's traveling through space. And that's where your appropriate distance from the heater, your mounting heights are very important. But for optimal comfort, we want to be at an appropriate distance from the heater. So with Bromic, we recommend that infrared heaters be mounted somewhere between 8 to 10 feet above the finished floor. Now, a lot of people have designed beautiful spaces that have really high ceilings, but when you get that high, you have so much energy loss as the infrared is traveling through space that by the time it reaches you, it's not going to be powerful enough to really provide that comfort when it's a colder day. This is where I always recommend using Bromic's design service to help with where the heaters should go. So if we are going to mount heaters a little bit higher, we want to maybe consider using a more powerful heater. So that way you have the appropriate comfort by the time the infrared reaches you. If you actually think about the lifespan of the product and the type of heater you're investing in, I don't feel like it's expensive at all. I actually feel like it's going to be much cheaper. So in comparison, the cheapest thing that you could buy at a box store would maybe be a mushroom heater. And your initial investment is going to be far lower. But now you got to think about your operating costs. Propane is the most expensive fuel source compared to natural gas and then compared to electricity. Now, also, the mushroom heater is a very inefficient design. So you might need 2 or 3 mushroom heaters to cover the area you need to heat. Had you invested a little bit more upfront, you would have had a more efficient design, whether that be a Bromic natural gas heater or a Bromic electric heater. With that more efficient design, you use less heaters. And then natural gas is going to be cheaper than propane to run. So now you have a more efficient heater with less fuel costs. Same with electricity. Electricity national average is going to be cheaper than propane as well. And again, with the electric infrared heaters from Bromic, you're going to cover a better, larger area. So if you think about that and not just your initial purchase, then Bromic infrared heaters are going to be far better investment, and they're going to last you a lot longer. There's an awareness gap in the type of heaters, just because there is so many different options out there. And then there's an awareness gap on who is the one responsible. And this is where I think everybody should get involved. So from your designer to your architect, so that they can find the right type of product that really works with the design, works with the architecture of the building. Work with your installer contractor to make sure you have appropriate power or fuel source. And then work with your local dealer and distributor to make sure you find the best product and best price for you. One of the most commonly overlooked elements when it comes to outdoor heat is how we're powering it. And when the heaters become an afterthought and they can't get built into the design, you're left with very few options. So you might have exposed gas lines or exposed conduit lines. So when we get out ahead of the design and we think about the heating at the same time we're thinking about lighting, then we can make sure that everything is very thoughtfully designed and they can all work together. So typically you would have your ceiling fan or your chandelier in the middle of the space, and then the heaters can be around it, providing that adequate comfort in the direction that we need it to go. When trying to determine the right heating solution for your space, you want to think of infrared heaters as spot heating. So you don't want to just take in your total square footage and try to calculate some sort of heater for that. You want to think about where people spending time. You want to focus the energy of your outdoor heat in those areas where you're going to be gathering and spending time. And then with that, you want to think about how the heaters are controlled. So if you have 2 separate areas of this, you want to make sure that those heaters are on separate zones. It's because when we're heating through electromagnetic waves to provide that instantaneous comfort to that person there, and you're not heating up the air, then you only need to turn the heaters on where you're gathering. So if you're transitioning from the dining table to the couch, you can turn the outdoor infrared heater off at the dining table, turn the one on the couch, and within 30 seconds, you'll start feeling that comfort. So now, with the efficient design and zoning control, you're saving yourself energy and cost. So when it comes to zoning control, we have a few different options when it comes to how we can control the heaters. So the heaters can be wired to an appropriately rated wall switch for on-off control. Also, Bromic has our affinity control solution, which would then give you an app-based control. And with Bromic's electric heaters, we also have dimming control. So you can fully dim the electric heaters to the exact comfort that you need. And that can all be from a simple tablet or your phone with a lot of great other features. And with Bromic's Affinity control system, it is compatible with home automation systems through our expansion board. And so now you can have from one source full control of your entire building or home. So with Bromic Affinity Control, you have the ability to control those heaters anytime you're connected to the network. So you are outside, the party's ending, everyone's transitioning inside, and then you remember as you're laying there that you forgot to turn the heaters off. You can do that from your bed through the Bromic app on your phone or tablet. The other thing that you can do is you can create a scene where the heaters would turn off at midnight if they were all left on. And that way, it really gives you that peace of mind. So when you have an open layout or you don't have a ceiling necessarily to mount a Bromic infrared heater to, we have a few different options. We can always wall mount a heater to either the building, or we could do a post. And then Bromic also offers freestanding heaters with natural gas, propane, and or electricity. So there's always a good option to appropriately heat your outdoor space, regardless if you have a ceiling or any other fixed structure to mount a heater to. And that's where I always suggest reaching out to Bromic's design service to really find the best solution for you. Bromic offers a free design service. So whether that is your new home addition or your restaurant or hotel, reach out to Bromic and we will provide you with a free design of what's the appropriate solution and the appropriate products for your specific needs. With pergola structures, any of our fixed mount heaters will work, whether they be gas or electric. And it really just depends on what else we have going on in your pergola. Do you have a ceiling fan in the middle? And so maybe keeping heaters mounted to the outside beams are the most appropriate solution. Or maybe there's no ceiling fan and one of our clips mounted right to the middle, we're providing you that heat and your light right in the center of your pergola could be a great solution. So when comparing gas and electric heaters, oftentimes it really comes down to your specific needs. So with a gas infrared heater, they do get hotter and they provide more comfort covering a larger area than electric heaters do. But with gas heaters, they do require a little bit higher ceilings, a little bit more clearances than electric. Also, you have to understand what your specific power needs are. So you might live in an area where natural gas isn't as readily available as electric is. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe your panel isn't sized appropriately to be adding electric heat, and a natural gas would be a better solution for you. They both offer amazing comfort, but they're very unique in what they require. When it comes to trying to determine the appropriate wattage or power size of an outdoor heater, you want to start with what do you have available? Do you have enough capacity in your panel to handle certain wattages? The other thing you want to understand is how big is the space that you're trying to heat? How high are your ceilings? So if you have a higher ceiling, then you want to start with a more powerful heater. Because again, as those electromagnetic waves travel through space, you have that energy loss. So you want to make sure you're adequate with what your starting power is. And this is where I would really rely on Bromic's design service to be able to offer you the appropriate powered heater, the appropriate size heater for your space. When it comes to trying to add Bromic's outdoor infrared heaters to an existing structure, an existing patio, it is very doable. You just might be limited in some of your choices. It might be more difficult to recess an electric heater and hide the conduit because you've already built out the space. But you can easily mount the heaters to your existing ceiling or your beams or wall. But there is no limitations when it comes to trying to add heaters to your existing space. It just might really be determined on where the heaters go, because we want to make sure that we are working with all of the components you have. And this is where we're relying on the Bromic's design service and providing us the information through photos and measurements of your space that we can really get you an accurate solution for you, keeping in mind all your individual and unique things that are going on in your patio. If you have any issues with your heaters, whether they be installation issues or user issues after the fact, we have a team of tech support available Monday through Friday that are going to be able to provide you with that support, whether that be installation, troubleshooting, or any sort of warranty claims. So when it comes to shopping around and why I feel Bromic is a superior product is we offer heaters in every category. We have our workhorse heaters in our tungsten line. We have our premium sleek platinum line, and then our Eclipse with the dual functionality with the heater and light. And we are the only manufacturer to offer such a full spectrum of gas and electric. We have the support from our design service to our tech support. And then we have the Affinity Control solution, which is that app-based control that just gives you so much functionality and features through that system that I really feel like that separates us from anyone else out there on the market. Bromic offers a marine grade platinum heater that is made of a 316 marine grade steel. So if you have a coastal home or if you have a vessel, that's a great solution for you. And oftentimes people ask me, do I need the marine grade or is the standard platinum the appropriate solution? And I always like to ask them, do you have a history of saltwater corrosion at this location? Are you in an area or a microclimate that has a higher concentration of salt air that has historically led to things prematurely rusting? If that's the case, then I do think our marine grade platinum would be a great solution for you. It comes with a 5-year warranty, and it's a great investment to really make sure that those heaters stay looking beautiful as well as always performing to Bromic standards. Bromic Heating with our Platinum Marine, we have a Lloyd's certification. We are the only infrared heater that has the Lloyd's certification, Lloyd's approval. And so if you do have a vessel that requires that, please reach out to us and we will provide you with that appropriate heater. So when it comes to thinking about your operational costs with infrared heaters, we want to start with what's the most efficient way I can heat this space? And the most efficient way to do that is through directional infrared heating. So then we have to compare our fuel source. So the most expensive way to do that is through propane tanks. They offer a lot of usability. You can move them around and they're very flexible, but they are the most expensive to run. And then next you have electricity. And the average is going to be a little over $1 per hour of running a 6 kilowatt heater, as compared to a natural gas heater, it's going to be about 50 cents an hour to run. But regardless of that, they are going to be more efficient and cheaper to run than a traditional propane powered mushroom heater. So when it comes to trying to find the best heater for you, you really want to also understand what is your site conditions like. Do you live somewhere where it gets extremely cold? So you want to look for the most powerful types of heaters. Do you live somewhere where it's really windy, where maybe a gas heater with the wind makes it a little less efficient and you would want to look at an electric heating solution? If you have a fully enclosed space, then you want to make sure you're looking at electric heaters. Outdoor heaters do need to remain completely in the outdoor environment with at least 25% of that wall volume always open for proper ventilation. So again, there's not a one size fits all when it comes to trying to find the best solution for you, and really leaning on Bromic's design service to find that appropriate heater, and the quantity and the fuel source and the power is going to be the best solution for you. So when you infrared heat with the wind, it's always going to be working because it's the infrared electromagnetic waves. The problem is you have wind chill. So the same as if you're sitting outside on a nice sunny day, but then the wind picks up and you get a little bit chilly from that wind chill. The sun hasn't changed its power. It hasn't gotten colder. It's just your feeling has dipped because of the wind. So when it comes to outdoor infrared heaters, it's the same thing. And so therefore, designing a patio with maybe some glass windbreaks or some other elements to help break off that wind will really be able to help extend your comfort in that area. Uniquely, when you're comparing gas and electric in windy environments, electric heaters are going to be a better solution. With gas heaters in a really windy environment, you potentially could blow the pilot light out, making the heater less efficient. The electric heater has no pilot light, so it'll always be working. So with infrared heating, it's heating you through electromagnetic waves. It's like the sun. Even on a cold day, you stand outside and those sun waves hit you and it warms you up. So standing in front of a Bromic infrared heater is like standing out on the sun in a nice cold day. You have those infrared waves warming you and providing that comfort that you need.